I was out of state for meeting a client when my wife called. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I'm divorcing you. And I've already sold the apartment. I'm starting my life with my new boyfriend, Mike. You'll have to figure out where you're going to live. I stayed calm, saying sounds good. But what she didn't know was that I had a plan of my own. The conference room buzzed as I glanced at my phone. Harper had called. I stepped into the hallway, expecting the usual check-in. How's the trip? When will you be home? Instead, her voice came through, cold and smug. I'm divorcing you, she said, almost gleefully. I sold the apartment, and Mike and I are setting up our life. You'll need to figure out your next move. For a moment, I could hardly breathe. The audacity, her complete lack of remorse. It was laughable. My hand tightened around the phone, my mind racing. You sold the apartment? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Yeah, she replied, her tone dry. Mike deserves better than a tiny place like that. Mike, that name stung, though I'd suspected for months, late nights, sudden trips, but hearing her say it so casually like I was the outsider in their life ignited something in me. Sounds good, I said flatly. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of hearing me crack. My name is Jordan, and until that phone call, I thought I had a marriage I could trust. Harper and I had been together for 6 years. It wasn't perfect, but I thought we were a team. The apartment we'd worked so hard to buy was supposed to be our home, a symbol of what we'd built together. But looking back, there were cracks I'd ignored. Her dismissive attitude about our finances, brushing off my concerns with a kiss and a smile. I had thought she was confident, but now I realized that confidence came from knowing she could manipulate me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went through client meetings, my mind spinning. Harper thought she'd won. She thought she could sell her home, walk away, and leave me scrambling. But there was something she didn't know. The apartment deed had been in my name alone for months. I had transferred it after we refinanced earlier in the year. Something Harper never questioned. She never bothered to ask for the details or read the paperwork. Her carelessness was about to be her downfall. By the time I reached my hotel room that evening, my shock had turned into resolve. I wasn't going to beg or cry. If Harper wanted to fight, she'd get one. But this time I was going to win. I called Finn, my lawyer and longtime friend. I explained the situation calmly, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. She sold the apartment? Finn asked, her disbelief clear. Does she even know she can't do that without your consent? I chuckled darkly. Apparently not. She thinks the money's already spent on her new life with Mike. Well, she's in for a rude awakening, Finn said. The sales invalid. You can prove sole ownership, and if she's taken any money from a buyer, she's facing fraud charges. Fraud. The word sent a jolt of satisfaction through me. What do? We notify the buyer that the sale isn't legal, Finn said. Then we send Harper a formal letter outlining the consequences. If she tries anything else, we take her to court. I felt a calm settle over me as I hung up. Harper thought she'd outsmarted me, that she'd left me powerless. But in reality, she had just set herself up for the ultimate humiliation. The rest of the trip was a blur of work. My emotions compartmentalized and focused on what lay ahead. The betrayal stung. But knowing I was about to reclaim my life and watch Harper's smugness crumble gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. When I boarded the plane home, I was ready to face her, ready to dismantle her lies, and ready to start a new chapter without her. This wasn't just about winning. It was about taking back control. The flight home gave me hours to think about how everything had unraveled. Harper's arrogance had been astounding. She hadn't even tried to hide her betrayal, as if I were just another obstacle to bulldoze on her path to freedom, but instead of spiraling into anger. I focused on what I would do when I returned. Harper thought I was powerless, but she didn't realize I had been playing the long game all along, even without knowing it. As the plane touched down, my first call was to Finn. I'm back, I said, hauling my suitcase off the luggage carousel. What's the next step? We've already notified the buyer, she replied, her voice brisk and efficient. They were shocked, to say the least, and not too happy with Harper. They're willing to cooperate, which helps our case. And Harper? I asked. I sent the formal letter to her email this morning. Finn said, it outlines the illegality of the sale, your sole ownership of the apartment, and the potential consequences of fraud. She hasn't responded yet, but if I had to guess, she's going to be furious. Good, I thought, let her stew. When I arrived home, the apartment was eerily quiet. Harper's things were still there, her jacket draped over the chair, her shoes carelessly tossed by the door. but the place felt different, as if the energy had shifted. I took a deep breath and set my suitcase down, knowing the confrontation was coming. Sure enough, Harper stormed in that evening, her face red with anger and her phone clutched tightly in her hand. "What the hell is this?" she shouted, waving the letter Finn had sent. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, Harper," I said calmly, crossing my arms. "It's not. The deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell something you don't own." She froze, her face a mixture of confusion and rage. "What are you talking about?" I grabbed the deed from the file I had pulled earlier, holding it up for her to see. "After we refinanced, I had the deed transferred to my name. You signed off on it, remember? Or did you just skim the paperwork like you always do?" For a moment, she said nothing. Then her expression twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so smart, don't you? This doesn't change anything. I already made a deal, and you're going to look like a fool when it all falls apart." I stared at her, unblinking. "The sale is already void. Harper, the buyer knows it, and they're ready to take legal action if you don't return the money." "Oh, and speaking of money," I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "If you spend a single cent of that deposit, you're in even bigger trouble." Harper's confidence wavered for the first time. "You don't know what you're talking about," she muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, my voice steady. "You've spent years treating me like I'm too naive to notice what you're doing, but guess what, Harper? I've been paying attention, and now you're going to deal with the consequences." She started pacing, her frustration mounting. "This is ridiculous. You're blowing everything out of proportion. You can't just kick me out of here." I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. This apartment is legally mine. You can stay here for now, but only because I'm giving you the courtesy of time to figure out your next move. But let me be clear, I'm not going anywhere." Over the next few days, Harper's anger turned into desperation. She called me repeatedly, leaving frantic voicemails that alternated between begging and threatening. Meanwhile, Finn worked behind the scenes to tie up every loose end. The buyer rescinded the agreement, furious with Harper for wasting their time and money, and Finn began drafting the preliminary paperwork for the divorce proceedings. "You're in a good position, Jordan," she told me during one of our meetings. "Harper has no leverage here. Between the voided sale and the fraud charges hanging over her head, she'll have to cooperate if she wants to avoid a bigger mess." Her words brought relief, but also a harsh realization of just how much I'd allowed Harper to control my life. For years, I'd ignored her dismissiveness and arrogance, convincing myself it wasn't worth fighting over. But now, I saw the extent of what I'd been sacrificing. I was determined to take it all back. Willow, my best friend, came over one evening to help me reorganize the apartment. We packed up Harper's things, stacking them neatly in the corner of the living room. "How's she taking all this?" Willow asked, holding up one of Harper's expensive scarves with a smirk. "Not well," I replied, laughing despite myself. "She still thinks she can talk her way out of it, but I'm not budging." "Good," Willow said, tossing the scarf into the box. "She doesn't deserve a single inch of your space or your time." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her support. For so long, I'd felt alone in my marriage, carrying the emotional and financial weight while Harper took credit for everything. But now I had people in my corner, and that made all the difference. The final piece of my plan fell into place the day Harper brought Mike to the apartment. I was sitting at the dining table reviewing paperwork when they walked in like they owned the place. Mike looked around with a smug smile, his arm looped through Harper's. "So this is where we're staying?" His voice dripped with entitlement. I stood up, my heart racing but my resolve unwavering. "No," I said firmly, "this is where Harper was staying." "You, Mike," I added, "won't be staying here at all." His smile faltered, and he glanced at Harper, who looked just as stunned. "What is this?" she demanded. "This," I said, gesturing around the apartment, "is my home. Not yours, not his, and certainly not a hotel for you two to shack up in after you stab me in the back." Mike's expression turned icy, but he didn't speak. Harper, on the other hand, was fuming. "You can't do this," she shouted. "You're being unreasonable." I met her gaze without flinching. "No, Harper, what's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my home, walk away with the money, and expect me to roll over. You're lucky I haven't filed criminal charges for now." Harper stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger, while Mike crossed his arms, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "You're being ridiculous, Jordan," she said, her voice dripping with desperation. You can't just kick me out of my own home. I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. This is my home. Harper, the deed has been in my name for months, and you know that. You signed the paperwork without reading it, like you always do. So no, this isn't your home anymore. Mike glanced at Harper, his grip tightening on his briefcase strap. Wait, what's she talking about? He asked, his tone sharp. You said this was your apartment, that you sold it. Harper flinched and waved him off. It's complicated. I'll handle it, I said, stepping closer. Oh, it's not complicated. You try to sell an apartment that doesn't belong to you. That sale is void. Harper, and as of right now, you don't have a leg to stand on. Mike's composure finally cracked. You mean the money you told me you had? He stopped mid-sentence, his voice rising. Oh my God, did you lie about that too? Harper, clearly scrambling, held up her hands. Mike, let me explain. But he wasn't having it, no, I said, cutting her off. Let me explain. I turned to Mike. Harper tried to sell the apartment behind my back, thinking she could pocket the money and leave me with nothing. What she didn't know is that I had the deed transferred to my name months ago. Not only did she fail to sell it, but she also committed fraud by pretending she could. Mike's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Fraud? He whispered, taking a step away from Harper. Are you serious? Yes, fraud, I replied, crossing my arms. And I'm prepared to press charges if she doesn't get her things and leave by the end of the day. Harper's facade finally cracked. You can't do this, Jordan, she said, her voice now pleading. We've been together for 6 years. You can't just throw me out. You threw me out the moment you made that phone call. I shot back, my voice hardening. You told me you were divorcing me and laughed about me having to find a new place to live. You didn't just betray me. Harper, you tried to ruin me. So don't stand there and act like you're the victim. Mike took another step back, his eyes darting between us. This is insane, he muttered, clutching his briefcase tighter. You didn't tell me any of this. Harper, you said you had everything handled. Harper turned to him, desperation written all over her face. Mike, I can fix this, I just need. He cut her off with a raised hand. Just don't, I'm not getting dragged into your mess. Without another word, Mike turned on his heel and stormed out, leaving Harper standing there, stunned. I couldn't help but smile as the door clicked shut behind him. Looks like you're on your own, I said, turning back to Harper. Now let's talk about what happens next. She slumped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Jordan, please, I screwed up. I know that, I replied, grabbing a folder from the kitchen counter and setting it down on the coffee table in front of her. But you don't have to do this. You're right, I continued, my voice steady. I don't have to do this, but I am. I slid the divorce paperwork toward her. My lawyer has already drafted it, and I suggest you sign it quickly. The sooner you do, the sooner we can both move on. She stared at the folder, her face draining of color. You really hate me that much? Hate you? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Harper, I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you. You had everything, someone who loved you, a home we built together, and you threw it all away because you couldn't see past your own ego. I stood, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. I want you out of here by the end of the day. Take your things and figure out where you're going to stay. This is the last time I'm giving you any grace. She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, she muttered. I'll go. Good, I said, walking toward the door. And don't even think about trying anything else. Finn's already handling everything. The next time you cross a line, I won't hesitate to let the courts handle it. As I opened the door, Harper slowly stood, grabbed her coat, and without looking at me, walked out, her footsteps heavy with defeat. For a moment, I felt a twinge of sadness. Not for her, but for the life we could have had if she'd been the woman I thought she was. But that moment passed quickly, replaced by a deep sense of relief. I closed the door behind her and locked it with a new key I'd had made. This was my home now, and no one, especially not Harper, would take it away from me again. The silence in the apartment after Harper left was deafening. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The space no longer felt weighed down by her presence, her entitlement, or her lies. It was just me, the home I'd built, and the quiet realization that I'd won. Not just against her, but against every doubt I'd ever had about standing up for myself. I stood in the middle of the living room, taking in the emptiness where her things had been, her oversized makeup vanity, the framed fashion prints cluttering the walls, the gaudy coffee table she'd insisted on keeping, gone. The apartment felt cleaner, brighter, like it was mine again. That evening, Willow came by with takeout and a bottle of wine. "Is she really gone?" she asked, plopping down on the couch with a dramatic sigh. "Gone and not coming back," I said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. I gave her until the end of the day to pack her things. She didn't argue. Willow raised her glass to fresh starts and well-deserved victories. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the weight of the past week slowly lifting, to never letting someone walk all over me again. Over the next few days, I began to reclaim the apartment piece by piece. I rearranged the furniture, moved my favorite artwork into the living room, and filled the space with things that made me happy. It wasn't just about redecorating. It was about turning the apartment into a reflection of who I was, not the person Harper had tried to make me. Finn called with updates on the legal proceedings, her voice exuding the kind of confidence that made me feel invincible. "The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer decided not to pursue them," she explained, "but the divorce paperwork is moving along smoothly. Once Harper signs, you'll be officially free." Hearing the word free made my chest tighten. It wasn't just about the divorce. It was everything I'd been carrying for years. The resentment, the self-doubt, the feeling of being trapped in a marriage that didn't value me. It was all finally being lifted. Harper tried to reach out a few times. Her messages ranged from half-hearted apologies to pathetic attempts to guilt me into reconciling. She had sent me another message the next day, one that was more desperate. "You're going to ruin me, Jordan. Is that what you want?" I didn't reply. For once, I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. She'd made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. By the end of the week, the apartment felt like a completely new space, warm, inviting, and entirely mine. As I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, the city lights twinkling outside the window, I thought about everything that had happened. Harper's betrayal had been a shock, but it had also been a wake-up call. For too long, I let myself believe that I didn't deserve better, that I had to settle for whatever scraps of respect and love she decided to throw my way. But now, I knew better. I wasn't just reclaiming my apartment. I was reclaiming my life. A month later, my life looked completely different. The apartment was unrecognizable, not because of any drastic renovations, but because of how it felt. It was a space that reflected me, my taste, my personality, and my newfound independence. The absence of Harper's clutter and her overbearing presence made the home feel lighter, freer. The divorce was moving along smoothly. Finn had handled everything with precision, ensuring Harper had no room to argue or complicate the process. She signed the papers without much fuss, likely realizing that she had no leverage. There was no grand showdown, no emotional plea to work things out, just a cold, clean break that felt both bittersweet and deeply satisfying. One day, as I sorted through some old papers, I came across a photo of Harper and me from our early years together. We were smiling, arms around each other, full of hope and promise. I stared at it for a moment, letting the memories wash over me. There had been good times, moments when I truly believed we were building a life together. But those moments were gone, overshadowed by years of neglect, manipulation, and betrayal. I tucked the photo into an envelope and put it away in a drawer. It wasn't worth keeping out in the open, but I wasn't ready to throw it away either. It was a part of my past, but it didn't define me anymore. Willow and I celebrated the finalized divorce with dinner and drinks at a trendy rooftop bar downtown. "You're glowing," she said, raising her cocktail and offering a toast. "Single life suits you." I laughed, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. "It's not the single life," I said. "It's the freedom. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm living under someone else's rules." We toasted to that. And as the night went on, I felt a growing sense of pride in myself. I'd faced one of the hardest moments of my life and come out stronger. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Back at home, I started planning for the future. The apartment had become more than a refuge. It was a symbol of everything I'd reclaimed, but I knew I wouldn't stay there forever. Someday, I'd move to a new place, one without any lingering shadows of my life with Harper. Until then, I was determined to make the most of every moment in the space I had fought so hard to keep. As I curled up on the couch that night, a sense of peace washed over me. I thought about how Harper had laughed during that phone call, so certain that she'd won, and I couldn't help but smile. Her arrogance had been her downfall, and my quiet strength had been my salvation. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I called the shots, one where I chose happiness on my own terms. And after a long time, I felt truly free.